everyone, this is Noah Diffenbaugh at Stanford University, and I'm very excited to be hosting this Hangouts on Air today to talk about the severe weather that's been occurring in the United States, what's been causing that weather, and whether or not climate change is playing a role. This Hangout on Air is being co-hosted by Greg Dalton of Climate One, the Commonwealth Club of California, so I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Thanks, Noah, and thanks for suggesting this, using this new technology platform to talk about this as it's happening.
I'm Jason Samenow. I am the weather editor of the Washington Post.
I'm Harold Brooks. I'm a research meteorologist at NOAA's National Severe Storms Laboratory.
Hi, I'm Marty Hoerling. I'm also with NOAA here in Boulder, Colorado.
Hi, I'm Angela Fritz. I'm from Wonderground.com.
I'm Dave Metz. I'm a partner in Fairbank, Maslin, Mullen, Metz & Associates, and I'm a pollster who works on a wide array of political and policy issues.
Let's start in Washington, sweltering Washington. Jason, you had a competition to name the derecho. Was there a winner of naming this episode of extreme heat?
Well, I think it's running neck and neck between Derechosaurus rex and swelter in place, which is what Washingtonians have been doing for the past week. Many of us without air conditioning and power, although the majority of customers have been restored as of yesterday and into today. So, of course, today we also set a record for the most consecutive days at or above 95 degrees. We hit 95 or higher for the 9th straight day today for the first time in 140 plus years of records.
One of the things that makes derechos particularly difficult to deal with from the human standpoint is that they're organized, and they produce this very wide area of destruction.
Does anyone else have thoughts on fingerprints and the derecho? Is this something that can be attributed to anthropogenic climate disruption?
It's a pretty rare event. I mean, as Harold said, we don't have a lot of observations on phenomena of that type, so it's really difficult to even begin addressing whether there's a trend, let alone whether there's been a human fingerprint on it.
Greg, Harold and I have worked on this question of severe thunderstorm events and global warming, and our findings suggest that the increase in energy in the atmosphere overwhelms the decrease in shear to create an environment that's more frequently conducive to severe thunderstorms. But we published a couple studies on that, and we need more work to really nail that down. Harold, I don't know if you have other reactions to that.
We would expect to see potentially more severe thunderstorm winds occurring, but the real problem is that derechos, as I mentioned, are a special organized kind of an event. And whether we see an increase in the winds or convective winds, they're in essentially disorganized storms or in organized storms, that's what we really can't tell anything that's going to be happening in the future.
You used a term there, anchoring. Does that sound like you said talking about one specific data set? Because I've heard this in respect to temperatures, that there's sort of national average temperatures, but locally there's been 6,500 high temperature records in the lower 48 just in the last 30 days.
A person experiences something. You experience the heat wave, let's say, or the derecho event, and you maybe have not experienced anything like that before, and your knee-jerk reaction is something has changed.
Depending on who's experiencing the wildfire and who's experiencing the derecho, no matter what scientists say about attribution, their number one reaction is, wow, this is really crazy weather that we have not experienced ever, in our lifetime.
Dave, is that true that people care most about the local? It's certainly axiomatic, but is there evidence for that?
There is, and I'd say that a lot of the public opinion data really carries out what has just been conveyed by the last two folks who spoke.
It's interesting, though, that it's what you've described is really inverted from our scientific understanding, in that we understand the response of global mean temperature to changes in greenhouse gas concentrations really, really well. Not perfectly, but really, really well. And we understand the response of severe thunderstorms at very local scales really quite poorly. And yet, what you're describing is that if someone has a severe thunderstorm that they haven't experienced before and it happens over their head, basically, that then they think, well, maybe there is something to this global warming thing.
There's no doubt that the globally average temperature of the planet has risen beyond any doubt, beyond where you would expect them to be from natural variability alone. When I say natural, I mean the variations that would be related to the way the wind patterns naturally blow, interact with the oceans, throw in some volcanic activity, throw in some solar variability, but in the absence of the carbon emissions. Now, that's for the global average. The detectability, the time of emergence is coming closer for temperatures at the scale of, let's say, the United States. Some would say we're perhaps there. I'm not quite sure. But at Washington, D.C., in the backyard of our Capital Weather Gang friends, we're not there.
In the city of Barry Bonds, I was loving the steroids analogy until Martin shot holes in it. But I'll use it carefully, or use the fences instead of the steroids.
Well, Greg, it turns out that in Major League Baseball there was both the steroids and the fences were moved in many ballparks as well. So
right.
Major League Baseball pushed on both those ends. Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I would chime in is that, in my view, the right way to communicate to the public is what's scientifically accurate.
We haven't talked that much about hurricanes, Harold. Do you want to touch on that? And I think we're getting close to the end here. We're about 47 minutes in. On hurricanes and their damage effect. Well,
when we start adding in damage, things get really messy because there's a lot of things happening in terms of the wealth of locations and how much a property gets damaged when a hurricane or a thunderstorm occurs.
Anything else that we haven't touched on before we kind of get close to the end of our promised time here?
Well, Greg, I think the one point I would add is in the flyover from east to west, we kind of skipped the Midwest, and the severe heat that's been occurring in the Midwest is there's a lot of anecdotal evidence now that it's having a big effect on agricultural systems, particularly the corn crop in the U.S. And there have been a number of high-profile news stories about that recently. And I am certainly not here to advocate that that's due to global warming, and the increasing severe heat over the Corn Belt in the United States is something that certainly we've published as being a likely change over the next several decades if global warming continues as it has. Thank you everyone for joining, and thanks to all of our guests, and look forward to talking again in the future.